Today's meeting is being recorded and filmed and will be made publicly available on the website. Can we please ensure... Sorry? Can you all hear? Yep. Please can we ensure mobile phones are switched off or on silent? Toilets are located in the corridor to your left. I've not been made aware that there's going to be a fire alarm test. So if the fire alarm does go off, it is for real. And we gather in the car park at the front of the building. So for yourselves, it will be the entrance to your left, and for members, it's probably the entrance behind me. Any apologies for absence, Nikki, please?
Yes, Chair. Apologies from Councillor Greg White, Councillor Taylor is subbing, and from Councillor Burr.
Thank you very much. Minutes from the meeting held on the 21st of August. Does anybody have any comments on those minutes? Does anybody have anything for the minutes or not? Or shall we take it by general affirmation? I know Councillor Taylor would have to abstain because he wasn't here. And you're abstaining. You were on holiday, so it would be us three. Thank you. Anybody have any declarations of interest? Can I just say from the chair for transparency, I have had a number of emails lobbying in various forms for the item number 4 and item number 5. It's personal, non-prejudicial and non-pecuniary.
Can I say, Chair, I also had an email as well about both items as well from as well.
And Councillor Andrews. Right, moving swiftly on, we come to item 4 on the agenda, which is application number ZE24/00112/M full. This is for the erection of a retail unit class E with associated car parking, access, hard and soft landscaping and associated works at land north of Commercial Street, Norton. We do have a speaker for this later on, but I think it's Mr. Jones.
Thank you, Chairman, members of the public. So this application was brought to committee previously and was deferred for a number of matters to be addressed. I will run through the drawings and the photographs momentarily. However, I'll quickly run through the matters that were raised by members previously. So, as I say, it's an application for an Aldi food store. It's 1,802 square metres. Provision of 89 car parking spaces on site. So the issues that were raised by members requesting that the applicant considers the installation of solar panels on the roof of the premises, and I'll come to each of these matters as we go through the drawings. Obtain details of how the committed £25,000 would be spent on the upgrade of the existing pedestrian crossing. Obtaining further information on the possible impacts on air quality and the potential for the collection of baseline air quality data. So the idea here, bearing in mind the site is outside of the air quality zone, looking at the potential for looking at the ongoing impact of the development on air quality in the vicinity of the application site. Request that the applicant prepares an amended travel plan for the routing of deliveries, utilising the access from the A64 and Bramley Fields. Request that the applicant undertakes additional transport modelling with reference to queuing traffic, and request that the applicant look at the car park design in order to reduce vehicle speeds and look at the security of the car park in the evening. So as I go through the presentation, I will focus primarily on those issues. Clearly, if there are wider issues that members have questions on, I'll take those questions afterwards, but I'll focus the presentation on those matters. So first drawing, please. Shows the site. So we are just off Commercial Street. This is a vacant plot, partly having been occupied by the ATS Tyre Centre in the past. Clearly, it has a fairly significant impact on the character of the area as it stands. Scrub, rubbish. It's a very poor site from a visual amenity point of view. The general principles around the redevelopment of the site, we're satisfied that they're acceptable. The report goes through that in some detail in terms of the retail siting, the retail impact assessment, and the sequential approach that's taken toward development in a location such as this. Next image, please. So again, a bit of a zoom in. Those of you that know the site, clearly the relationship to Commercial Street is a very functional one. There are then residential properties on three sides and the railway then beyond. Just noting the position of the railway, the consultation responses from Network Rail with regard to protective fencing and measures to prevent ingress of vehicles onto the railway. That's covered by condition, so we don't have those full details, but we're satisfied that the methods that will be used in order to prevent vehicle or public access onto the railway are a fairly standard approach, and we're satisfied that the conditions appropriate. Next image. Bit more detail. So we're then on to the issues of the layout of the site, the relationship to Commercial Street in terms of the access, and then some of the matters that have been raised through the committee from last time. First thing here, I think, is really with regard to the bollards. If you see the blue space, if you like, adjacent to the access, immediately to the right of that is some wording. The proposal is to have lift-up bollards in that location, such that the spaces, the visitor spaces that offset from Commercial Street in terms of the bus stop are still accessible, but then lift up bollards within the site in order to prevent evening access after the store is closed, antisocial behaviour and such like associated with car usage in the vicinity. So I think from officer's point of view, it's a really simple solution. It's one that doesn't involve a lit barrier. However, it will prevent vehicular access into the site after closing. Next image, please. So nothing much here changes, but I wanted to remind you of the sort of scale of the building that we're discussing here. The next image, actually, just hold fire, but the next image I think shows a bit more of the height relationship to the neighbouring buildings. The idea was that we're keeping the height of the building, the form of the building, kind of within the height restrictions given by other buildings in the vicinity. And I think from that point of view, the development's very successful. Whilst it's a simple building, the materials now being used reflect those in the vicinity, and from a conservation and heritage point of view, we're satisfied that that works in terms of the relationship to the settlement. Next image. This is the roof plan. So there was a conversation around the solar panels and solar panel provision, which I think perhaps we didn't get into an awful lot of detail at the time, but the developers actually increased the number of solar panels on the roof, I think from 200 to 275 or some such. So a fairly significant increase anyway. I can't really see how they could go further than that and still incorporate functional requirements of the building. So from our perspective, certainly that requirement is well and truly ticked. Next image. So again, this shows a little bit more detail around the proposed layout plan. Clearly at the moment, there are a number of trees on site, fairly scrubby, self-seeded sort of things. Frankly, we lose all of that vegetation in lieu of the layout. So this really shows how they're proposing to break up the site, to utilise planting in certain areas in order to mitigate some of those losses. I think overall we're satisfied that it was primarily a brownfield site, a previously developed land. As I say, a lot of self-seeded bushes and such like, smaller trees on site. We're not concerned by their loss. Certainly the benefits of the redevelopment of the site and the benefits of the introduction of this retail offer in this location, we find that significantly offsets any harm that's identified. Next image. So this was the image I was discussing previously with regard to the height relationships. So really the building sits very cosily within that environment. The existing buildings still dominate in terms of overall height. So we don't have that scenario whereby you'll read the street frontage and the traditional buildings with this large block of a building behind it because of the height relationship, because of the roof form. That sits well and truly within that overall sort of physical environment. Next image, thank you. Oh yes, there was I was forgetting there was a zoom in of the bollards. So this again was simply showing the proposed access solution with the bollards. So a few images. The first two images are CGI type images showing the relationship of the new building to the existing frontage. So we see again a building that, whilst it's, how can I put it, it's a fairly sort of common design approach in terms of the overall shape and form of the building. They've sought to respond to the environment in terms of the materials used. And I think, again, the relationship is a successful one. Clearly, we've managed to get this fairly large retail unit in, plus its car parking, and in my view, very little impact visually or on amenity in the vicinity of the application site. Next image. And next. So a series of images in the vicinity. So the location of the pedestrian crossing improvements, there was some discussion at the last committee, and frankly, we didn't have the information to explain that situation. So there's a request from the Highways Authority for monies towards improvements to this crossing. And effectively, it's a matter of upgrading the technology. So the geometry of the road roughly stays the same, the position of the crossing stays the same, but the technology will be improved in order that we switch to LED solution. A lot of the work that's going on in the council at the moment is looking at these sorts of low maintenance, self-triggering, fault finding sort of solutions across the council. And certainly this is an opportunity in this case to improve that crossing from that perspective, to improve the lighting and to create a solution which, as I say, is self-monitoring effectively, will alert the engineers to any faults so that we don't have that scenario whereby, a member of the public reports a fault. It then goes through various systems in order to go to the engineers before it's then, actioned. In this situation, there's an opportunity to have that fault monitoring in a much more efficient manner in order that the engineers are alerted immediately. Next image. So these are just a couple of images showing the nature of the site. Next image. View of the entrance looking west. So you get a feel for that character. It's clearly a previously developed land. Lots of scrub, concrete pads and such like associated with the previous occupiers. And as I say, from an officer's point of view, this proposal is a real opportunity to tidy that site up and as I say, create a worthwhile retail function in this vicinity. Next image. That's the last one. Excellent. So we've covered the issues of the solar panels and the improvements to the crossing. The question around air quality and the potential for baseline air quality data collection. So we've talked to the scientific team about this and the information that been provided in the application itself. And certainly, as I said before in the previous committee, the site is outside of the air quality monitoring zone as it stands today. So in other words, there isn't an existing or ongoing issue, despite the issues of queuing traffic in this vicinity. Certainly, in looking at the requirements for air quality monitoring, the scientific team have looked at the submissions in terms of what is actually happening in the road vicinity at the moment, and whether or not the changes to the proposals, or rather the changes to install this development, would result in any significant change to that scenario. Now, clearly, adding traffic, and we accept that a proportion of the visitors to this site will be new to the vicinity. The estimation is approximately 50-50. So 50% would be traffic that's already passing the site, would then utilise this retail offer, and 50% would be new traffic effectively coming to the area. Based on the numbers, both provided by the applicant, based on the information that we have from the TRICS database, which basically looks at the, if you will, an average for this type of development, the scientific team are satisfied that there's no further requirement for monitoring as a result of this development. Now, clearly, part of their work is looking more widely at air quality and air pollution, and should there be a perception of an issue, that's a matter they could pick up at any time. So we're satisfied that there's no requirement for this proposal. The travel plan, from the outset, I think in reality there was an expectation that the development would use the A64 junction, and as a result wouldn't be coming through town in any case. However, we've reinforced that matter with regard to condition 32, which then sets out a requirement for those travel plan documents to be put in place and agreed. Now, clearly, and I'm thinking of a scenario, we could have a scenario where a particular piece of kit has to come in via, shall we say, a non-preferential route. That process would allow for that to happen if it was considered to be necessary. However, it also gives us the opportunity to frankly say no, that you've got to look at other opportunities in order to access the site. That would be, as I say, cleared through the condition process. Transport modelling and traffic queuing. So quite a lot of work had been done previously with regards to both on both sides of the equation, from the applicant's transport consultant and from the Highways Authority side. Bearing in mind the information that was provided did two things really. One was modelling and looking at what would happen when the development is implemented, but also looking at the scenario on the ground as it stands. So it's not all based on modelling. It is based on an experiential observation of what's happening in that vicinity. Bearing in mind also they took out, and this was the case for the air quality assessment as well, they took out the years during COVID in order that wasn't taken into account, because clearly that would give us a slightly skewed situation from that perspective. So again, from that perspective, we're satisfied that, bearing in mind the MPPF requirement for us to refuse a development will be a severe impact on traffic safety. We're nowhere near that scenario. I think there is clearly a recognition that when the railway crossing closes, particularly in peak hours, we have a situation with backed up traffic. No two ways, and I'm not going to start to try to argue against that position. However, we don't find that the proposal then introduces an unsafe scenario as a result of that queuing traffic. The other part of that is looking at the discrete arrangement of the access, both in terms of the position of the footpath on the access point itself, and also the position of the bus stop. So the bus stop is to move further to the west, so it's no longer in the visibility splay, and the extension of the footpaths adjacent to the access and forming that bell mouth project slightly in order to sit further out into the visibility splay, thereby allowing access onto the highway in a more effective manner. And finally, with the car park, so we discussed the issues around reduction of speeds and security with the bollards. I think, in summary, and as I say, I don't propose to go through all of the other considerations, But I think from officers' perspective, the general principles of development are found to be acceptable. We've been through the process of looking at this from a sequential perspective, looking at the other opportunities within the town, which would perhaps be otherwise sequentially preferable, but have been shown not to be deliverable or have been shown not to be viable from the point of view of an Aldi store in that sort of location. So we're satisfied that those principles are met, and therefore the general principle of the development in this location is acceptable. Clearly, there are a lot of technical matters which have been subject to consultation by third parties. They have invariably raised issues which the applicant has sought to address, and we've reconsulted with those consultees, and they are now satisfied that the development is acceptable. Now, from that perspective, the recommendation currently sits at requesting that you are minded to approve the application. However, I see no reason at this juncture why that shouldn't be changed to a grant subject to satisfactory completion of the Section 106 agreement. The heads of terms of which are set out in the near the end of the report, and are effectively seeking £5,000 for the monitoring purposes and £25,000 toward the upgrade of the pedestrian crossing. Excuse me. So, subject to that suggested change to the recommendation, the application is recommended for approval. Thank you.
Thank you very much. As I said earlier, we do have a speaker, Mr. Plum, I think it is. Mr. Plum, if you would like to come forward to the chair in front of you. It's not an inquisition. It's the green button on the microphone pad. You've got 5 minutes, Mr. Plum, to make your representations.
Yeah, thank you. Morning, Chair, members of the committee, and thank you for the opportunity to present to you in continued support of this planning application. I'm Simon Plum, Real Estate Director from Aldi, and sitting with me are consultants that have been involved in all those technical reports that have just been referenced. And we're very pleased that the application remains recommended for approval following the deferral in July. As you've now heard from your planning officer and set out in that committee report, we've made a number of changes to the scheme following the deferral. The additional solar panels on the roof, that was actually increased by 36%. We've also increased the number of physical electronic vehicle chargers to the site to 3, as shown on the plan up there on the screen. And alongside the physical items to deter antisocial behaviour and prohibit parking out with store hours. A condition requiring Aldi to prepare an HGV routing plan for agreement with planning officers prior to the store opening has been introduced, which we are able to fully accept, and this would ensure our HGVs delivering to the store avoid travelling through the town centre of Malton. And we trust these additions, alongside the clarifications provided by your officers on the other matters, now fully addresses your concerns over the development. Given the interest and questions at the last committee in sort of sustainable items, I just will like to stress as well that the new store will include several other sustainable benefits, and this is in line with Aldi's commitments to improve the sustainability of our offering. The store is heated by air source heat pumps and heat recovery systems, which capture otherwise wasted heat from the refrigeration plant. There's no gas supply for heating in the store. We put doors on all our chillers, and that simple exercise reduces the store energy by about 20%. Well, the store will have LED lighting, and that LED lighting, albeit efficient, is then reduced to a third lighting during stocking times. And going further in terms of the wider operation, in 2024 we converted over 30% of our HGVs to run on vegetable oil fuel, and a trialling number of electric HGV and trailers. It's something we take serious. A reminder of economic credentials of the development: up to 40 full-time equivalent jobs will be created, paid at industry-leading rates of pay. The scheme regenerates a disused site, as we've heard. It improves shopping choice in an accessible location, which will help stimulate link trips with Norton Centre. And all this involves over £6 million worth of investment, and it is deliverable. If Aldi is granted planning permission today, our intention is to start as soon as we can, but optimistically later this year, and we'll have the food store trading within 12 months, so a clear target. So really considering these benefits and reflecting the changes that have been made to the development following the previous deferral, I respectfully ask that members approve the application in line with your officer's recommendations. Clearly, I'm available to ask questions, but thank you very much.
Mr. Jones.
Yes, just one minor omission from my presentation. I do apologise. We did yesterday receive an additional representation in support of the application, essentially setting out that the use of the site when ATS had left as a car park had been a real benefit to the locality, and that actually providing for car parking now associated with Aldi and clearing up the site is a huge benefit to the locality.
Right, I'll open it up for questions from members. No. Well, I've got one small question, and it's my fault, and I haven't read it in the papers because I wasn't looking for it. The existing trees that are on site, have we got tree protection plans in for those? The root plans? Sorry.
No, the existing trees on site all go.
All go?
All go.
Oh, okay. Fair enough. Thank you very much. That answers that question then. I'll open it up for debate then. Councillor Napton.
Yeah, thank you, Chairman. Obviously, when we heard the application before, we had a number of concerns that were listed out by Peter. And I just welcome the fact that Aldi have been very responsive to that. I think many times we list out our concerns and we get a half-hearted response to those concerns. In this case, I think they seem to have addressed those concerns and gone beyond those concerns. So I very much welcome that. I think now that those have been addressed and looking at the scheme, and this is going to be a real benefit for Norton, both from its shopping experience, tidying up the environment, and also creating those 40 full-time equivalent jobs as well. So I welcome these amendments, and therefore I would propose that we approve this application, obviously with the caveat on the Section 106 agreement, I think.
Thank you. Councillor Baker.
I agree wholeheartedly with Councillor Napton, and I'd like to second the proposal, please, Chair.
Anyone else? Can I just say a big thank you to Aldi, because I am really grateful that you took away the concerns that the committee raised and responded so effectively to them. So I'm really grateful for that. So thank you. And I wholeheartedly agree with what my colleagues have said this morning. So members, if no one has anything else, I'm going to move it to the vote. Can you indicate, please, whether you are for, it's been moved and seconded for approval. So if we could take a vote on what that will be. So that's a unanimous vote. So thank you very much for that. And thank you for your attendance this morning. So the next item on the agenda is agenda item 22/1401/MUOT. This is a hybrid planning application comprising of one outline planning application for residential planning permission for up to 110 dwellings with all matters reserved, save for means of access, and then a full planning permission for change of use to public open space of an adjoining parcel of land on land west of the side of Malton Road in Pickering. We do have two speakers on this, but I'm going to hand it over to Alan to present the report. Thanks, Alan.
Thank you, Chair. Item 5 is on page 93 of the agenda. The application is brought before committee as it is considered that it raises significant planning issues. Members will recall that the item was deferred at the June meeting of Area Committee, and that was to allow further consultation with Yorkshire Water and the lead local flood authority in relation to surface water drainage and sewerage capacity. So I've got a number of updates and also reference to the late pages as part of this presentation. So the first slide is yeah, there's quite a lot on display there, but essentially the documents that members have received within the last 24 hours are summarised within that slide. So members should have had sight of a late representation from a member of the public, which raised concerns over lack of capacity within Pickering sewerage system and the impact of additional development within Pickering. Further to that, we've had a response from the applicant's agent, who has flagged up their position, which is that Yorkshire Water have statutory obligations in respect of the provision of infrastructure. And then further to that, yesterday we received a further consultation response from Yorkshire Water. So that response, members should have a copy of that, hard copy of that in front of them today. But essentially that is putting forward an additional condition. So they have considered the scheme further and put forward a pre-commencement condition that does also make reference to off-site infrastructure works. So the recommendation remains one of approval, but in terms of amendments, officers would put forward that condition 25, which is on page 140, is amended to remove the word foul from the first sentence. So the effect of that would be that condition 25 would only relate to surface water drainage design. So that's a condition put forward by the lead local flood authority. And in addition to that, we propose the extra condition as per the wording presented on the slide in front of members. So that is taken from the Yorkshire Water consultation response that arrived yesterday. So that is the updated recommendation on that, and obviously as part of questions and debate we can come back to this particular matter. So moving on to the presentation itself, I'll just run through a number of slides to remind members of the site and the surroundings. So the first slide is outlining the extent of the application site, 4.8 hectares. So this incorporates obviously the land for the change of use to public open space, and also the outline application for up to 110 houses. The site itself is allocated within the local plan. So the next slide is just outlining the public open space. So this is referred to within the description of development itself. So this is the proposed change of use on the western side of the application site. The reasons for this link back to the allocation itself. So this land was always intended to be undeveloped, given it falls within a flood zone 2 and 3. So moving on to the next slide, this is an extract from the site allocations from the policies map. So with the angled red hatched lines is the housing development, and the black line is the development limit. So the housing would fall within the development limit of Pickering. The red area to the east of the site is the Mickle Hill development. And then to the west, there is the disused railway line and areas of visually important open space. So that is in close proximity to a public right of way, which runs parallel to the western boundary of the site. So I'll just run through other slides, we're just highlighting the constraints and the surroundings. So an aerial photo here, you can see from the aerial photo, this actually shows the archaeological trial trenching that has taken place in advance of the determination of the application. In terms of the surroundings, as I say, Mickle Hill Retirement Village is to the east. To the north is Pool Court and Millfield Close. And then further to the north off Mill Lane is the swimming pool and fitness centre. To the rear of that is an area of existing public open space to the south of that facility. And then on the western side of the application site is a public right-of-way, public footpath, which is shown by the yellow dashed line. And beyond that is Pickering Beck, and that is the essentially the flood zone on the western side of the application site. And the other item just to highlight is that the listed buildings at Mill House, Vivers Mill, which are to the west of the site. So moving on to the next slide, this is focusing on the gas pipeline constraint that is affecting the site, which was mentioned at the last committee. The comments made by the HSE have been resolved. Initially, they did advise against granting permission for the public open space. They had concerns about congregations of people within play areas and similar facilities. So in response to that, the plans have been amended and the conditions have been imposed, which would control the location of any facilities that would encourage congregation of people. So the most obvious one of those is the play area, which we would require to be built within the housing development itself and not within the zone affected by the pipeline. So this is the indicative site layout that was put forward at the last committee. So this shows up to 110 houses. So this, I've just pointed out the play area, which was again just sort of indicative, but it was close to the pipeline. So within the next slide, again, just to caveat, it is indicative, but it is being shown within the housing development itself. So that is the type of layout that we'd be looking for. So this also takes account of the Yorkshire Water water main, which crosses the site, albeit Yorkshire Water have still raised concerns that they would like addressed when the layout is dealt with at reserved matters. So it's not perfect. I don't think the actual route of the main has been plotted completely accurately, but there is a condition that would require a standoff from that particular constraint. So again, within this, just to flag up to members on the eastern side of the site, the intention of the developer is to have a standoff, a landscaped buffer, which is part of the development principles for this particular allocation. So just moving on to the next slide. So this is the access. So in addition to the outline seeking approval of the principle of housing, the access is also up for consideration today. So this access has been deemed acceptable by the Highways Authority in terms of its width and provision of a wider footpath than existing. At the last committee, there was a question about the possibility of having a crossroad arrangement. The highways officers have confirmed that it is preferable to have a staggered arrangement to avoid any sort of requirement for signalised junctions or roundabouts. So this is the preferred option put forward. And then just moving on to photos of the site and the surroundings. So this is looking down Malton Road away from Pickering. So this is the entrance to Mickle Hill, facing the eastern boundary of the application site. So that's just highlighting the position of the proposed access. And this is flipped around facing back towards Pickering itself. So the existing properties on the left-hand side of those fronting Malton Road. And in the background is the church spire, which is referred to in the development principles and the scale of development, ensuring views are not obscured. Obviously, scale is a reserved matter. So this one, again, flipped around facing back the other way, Haygate Lane on the right-hand side, and it would be along Haygate Lane where the emergency access would be created. So I believe that's the next slide. Yep, so this is taken obviously just at the entrance to Haygate Lane facing back to Malton Road. That's the existing access into the site on the left hand side, a field access, which would no longer which would be closed off. And the next slide is further back along Haygate Lane. So it's along on the left hand side there would be an emergency access formed. So highways wouldn't want that to be used as a general access point, given the substandard visibility of Haygate Lane. So this is taken from the public footpath on the western side of the site facing across the site. So the roofs that you can see there is the Mickle Hill development in the background, and in the foreground is an area which would be the public open space. And then this is taken from the existing field access at a different time of year. So you can see the eastern boundary, which part of it would be lost to provide a wider footpath linking to town, but there would be landscaping requirements for that to be enhanced. And the next photos are panning around the site along the northern boundary. So the properties on Poole Court are in the background, and again facing towards the northwest. And just in the background there you can see the listed mill building on to the west of the application site. And then this is facing along the boundary that runs along Haygate Lane. And I believe that might be the couple more slides. So close-ups of the northern boundary, so showing the relationship of the site with those existing properties, which is predominantly bungalows, but there is a degree of two-storey development there as well. And then panning round to show the boundary with the pool and leisure facility and the public open space to the rear of that, and then towards the rear of the properties on Malton Road. So so this is stood within the application site, looking at the back of those properties. And I believe the final slide is facing from within the site back across to the Mickle Hill. So you can see the newer roofs of the Mickle Hill development on that slide. So I think if that is the final slide, it might be worthwhile just returning back to that update wording, if that's helpful. So yeah, so in terms of the condition and the conditions presented within the report, obviously the conditions are largely those which were presented in June of this year, which the applicant is aware of. But in light of the late representation from Yorkshire Water, which is a pre-commencement condition, legislation would require that we do get the applicant's approval of that approach. So the applicant is aware of that, but the response was only received late yesterday. So so that's just something to bear in mind. So in terms of the report itself, the principle of residential development in this location is supported by the local plan, which allocates the central and eastern parts of the site for up to 110 dwellings. The main concerns have been raised by the Town Council and the EHO and also local residents, with a focus on infrastructure within the town. The application relates to the second and final housing allocation within Pickering, as set out with the local plan within the local plan sites document adopted in 2019. The first being the Heathercroft development off Whitby Road, which is now complete. It is considered that the proposal in terms of spatial extent and quantum of development align with the allocation, and the principle of development is considered acceptable. The proposed housing would be predominantly two-storey, and there would be a policy compliant provision of 5% bungalows across the site. In terms of the Yorkshire Water responses, we can return to those. There are several responses that have been detailed in the report, and then obviously the late response yesterday. In terms of surface water, the lead local flood authority are satisfied with the detail provided to date, although there are conditions requiring the detailed design to come forward. As it stands, the surface water would discharge to ground via infiltration. In terms of the highways impact, the highways officers are satisfied with the proposed access arrangements, including the provision of an emergency access off Haygate Lane. As part of the off-site works, the speed limit the existing speed limit sign would be repositioned further south, so to the south of Haygate Lane. Just returning to the drainage strategy, also important to note that the final strategy won't be fixed until the layout comes forward. So that would be part of the reserve matters. So there is obviously scope for that to be confirmed at a later date. So the report summarises local concerns and objections which primarily relate to the principle of development, highway safety, the capacity of existing infrastructure and residential amenity. The conditions and reserve matters will secure appropriate scale and density parameters required for and a requirement for a landscape boundary to Malton Road. In addition, there would be a noise impact assessment and associated mitigation. The benefits of the scheme are noted as being a welcome contribution to housing supply, a policy compliant level of affordable housing secured by legal agreement, which, if 110 dwellings are provided, would be 38 affordable units, and the provision of and access to open space and nearby footpaths, and also biodiversity net gain and a pot of monies in the form of community infrastructure levy, which would be confirmed once we know the floor space to be provided at reserve matters stage. So with the application being made in outline, there is significant detail that remains to be assessed and agreed at reserve matters stage, and as a result, any grant of permission would need to be accompanied by a robust list of conditions which cover the scenarios in how the site might be brought forward. In conclusion, the starting point for decision making is the development plan. The development aligns with the allocation set out in the development plan, and officers have weighed the potential harms against the benefits, and in conclusion it is recommended that Planning Committee grant permission subject to the 47 conditions as listed in the report, plus the additional condition recommended, and also the satisfactory completion of a Section 106 agreement. So again, just to return to that additional condition, officers would seek delegated authority in terms of bringing it to the attention of the applicant and confirming the acceptability of the prior commencement aspect of that condition. But as it stands, we recommend it is included.
Thank you very much, Alan. We do have 2 speakers this morning, and they're sharing the 5 minutes because they're both objectors, so they're 2.5 minutes each, and that's Mrs. Holgate and Mrs. Flynn. So Mrs. Holgate, would you like to come forward first? It's the green button on the keypad, and you will have 2.5 minutes to make your representations. Thank you.
Morning, everyone. The residents of Poole Court object to this development for 3 reasons. Firstly, Pickering's inadequate sewage capacity. Ofwat, the government regulator of the water sector, have set a target of 20 spills per overflow by 2025. By June this year, Yorkshire Water's own statistics for its 2 stations in Pickering were 47 spills at one and 35 spills at the other. Pickering has a sewage system that is consistently failing the government's own targets for spills into the environment. More housing inevitably means that sewage and more waterways in Pickering being further polluted. This is environmentally and legally unacceptable. It's very clear that Pickering has a sewage system that needs radically updating before any further housing development should be approved. Yorkshire Water themselves have acknowledged the extreme challenge that any further housing would pose. The recent decision on appeal to allow planning permission for 140 homes off Middleton Road, which can be built but not lived in until sewage capacity permits, is absurd. Secondly, the problems with surface water. The issue of surface water at this proposed site will be addressed by a series of cellular storage tanks dispersed around the site. All new housing, roads and pavements can only increase the amount of surface water, and to an extent that cannot be accurately calculated. A more straightforward solution would not be to allow a housing development at a problematic site on low-lying land and adjacent to a floodplain. Failure of these proposed drainage measures means that residents of existing adjoining properties could have their gardens waterlogged, or that the surface water will flow into Pickering Beck and increase the prospect of houses in Mill Lane being flooded. The A169 from Malton from Malton direction is already the busiest approach road into Pickering, where traffic is either queuing or at a complete standstill. To compound this by building an estate with 110 homes, all of which will need access to this road at its busiest point, seems not only foolish but dangerous. In conclusion, we can see nothing to recommend this proposal. Pickering does not have the sewage capacity for permission to be granted.
Alan, do you want to respond to that now with the issues that have been raised, or do you want to hear the other speaker? The other speaker. Thank you very much. Mrs. Flynn, do you want to come forward? Again, it's the green button on the microphone pad in front of you, and you've got 2.5 minutes, Mrs. Flynn. Thank you.
Good morning. I'm the chair of the Residents Association at Mickle Hill, which is comprised of 179 residents of Mickle Hill. And their concerns are the town resources are not able to cope with the additional numbers of people living on a new estate, for example, the impact on schools, doctors, water reserves, sewage systems, and in our opinion, will compromise the paradigm of our small, historic, quaint market town image. But the overwhelming concerns are around the traffic infrastructures, especially on the A169 towards Pickering. Presently, it's not unusual, in fact, it's a daily occurrence for traffic to be stacked up as far back as the garden centres and often as far back as Gallitrairs. Well done on getting those photographs with just 1 or 2 cars on. Must have been out at 6 o'clock in the morning. The A169 is the main tourist route from West Yorkshire to Whitby, which is the tourism jewel in North Yorkshire, and of course Pickering. And this congestion is exacerbated by traffic lights at Lidl's, which cause hold-ups at the main roundabout. And this makes added difficulties for local residents to access the town's doctors and will include the residents of the new estate. The A169, that there was 179 elderly residents of Mickle Hill find the exit from our retirement village quite scary, often having to push ourselves out into the traffic, and annoying drivers who are actually sitting there for a long time in the traffic. There's no doubt that the traffic generated by the 110 new houses will have an additional and significant impact on the traffic situation, not only by the bare minimum of 110 occupiers' cars, but their visitors, friends, families, deliveries, essential services, postage, bin lorries, etc., etc. The increased traffic will also have a significant impact on air quality, affecting the health of our elderly residents at Mickle Hill. These are the main reasons we oppose this application.
30 seconds.
An in-depth investigation into this traffic situation is needed, not only how it will affect residents at Mickle Hill, but the wider residents of Pickering. It has been suggested as a cost to the developers that a mini roundabout or vehicle operated traffic lights could help, but obviously that's been dismissed. These are very serious concerns for the residents of Mickle Hill, and we ask that they are taken into consideration before decisions are made. Wow, it's good, isn't it?
Alan, over to you.
Yeah, thank you, Chair. In terms of the highways situation, obviously the application is accompanied by a transport assessment which has been considered by the highways officers. Ultimately, the site is allocated for a set number of houses. The proposal in front of us isn't any more than the allocation, and the highways officers have managed to secure the off-site improvements in terms of the footpath widening, and also the layout would secure footpaths through the site linking to Haygate Lane and to the public open space to the north. So there is and the site is walkable to Pickering, so it is there are sustainability benefits of developing this site. In terms of the sewerage capacity, obviously we've got the Yorkshire Water response on that now. That condition, Yorkshire Water, whether we could just bring that up on screen if possible, Nikki, but obviously Yorkshire Water haven't objected to the principle of development and do acknowledge the strategic allocation and the importance of the site for housing within Pickering. But obviously this condition would control the timing to an extent, because it would obviously, it's a Grampian condition that would stop the houses from being occupied. until that infrastructure has been signed off. So it might potentially affect the deliverability of the site, and that would be a matter for the applicant to consider. But in terms of addressing the timing of the improvements, that is a condition that we would put forward as recommended by Yorkshire Water.
Thank you for that, Alan. Can I just ask you, because I suspect some of the people at the back of the room may not be able to read that, if we could read it out slowly so that they can grasp what we're saying. Sorry, Alan. Thank you.
Yeah, of course, yeah. So the condition is no development shall take place until details of the proposed means of foul water disposal for the entire site, including any balancing works, off-site works and phasing of the required infrastructure, have been submitted to and approved by the local planning authority. No buildings shall be occupied or brought into use until the approved foul drainage works are completed, and the reason given for that condition is to ensure that no foul water discharges occur until suitable disposal arrangements are in place.
I'll open it up for questions. Councillor Baker.
On the previous planning application we've discussed today, there was arrangements whereby the applicant would contribute to road issues in that they contributed to the traffic lights. Now, I believe I brought up at the last meeting the fact that I thought it would be infinitely better for the residents of the properties to the east of Malton Road and the proposed development if there was a crossroads. I agree Highways have said not, but I still feel if the applicant could be asked to contribute to traffic lights, I still feel that there is a safety issue there without being rude about it, it is designated a retirement village and all the issues that implies.
Yeah. Yeah, so the development would generate a pot of SIL money, but in terms of that specific item, like you say, it was obviously a matter at the last committee, and Highways officers have given a view on that. The preferred arrangement is that shown on the plan in terms of a staggered access, and their position is that they believe that the vast majority of pedestrians would carry on into town along the western side of Malton Road as opposed to crossing towards the east. So it's really a matter of the Highways officers taking the view that there wouldn't be the footfall that would warrant a crossing or a particular crossroad arrangement, because obviously they believe that the majority would stay on that side of the road as they walk into town. So and like I say, the access is as per that put forward. So that's really sort of where we're up to with that from the Highways perspective.
Right, sorry, I'm not considering pedestrians here. I'm more concerned about drivers exiting either developments, trying to cross Malton Road, turn, and with, as you know, we all know it's quite a busy route into Pickering. I just feel with a staggered crossroads, there's going to be a lot for drivers exiting both sites to take recognition of.
Yeah, I think, yeah, comments noted. I think the difficulty is that obviously Highways have stated a preference for the staggered, and there will be Highways safety technical reasoning behind that being deemed acceptable.
Anybody else got any questions? Because I have quite a lot. Michelle, do you want to kick off then?
Thank you, Madam Chairman. I think what I just wanted to try and sort of just delve into a bit was this concept of conditions, because obviously we're aware of the unallocated site that's gone through the planning inspectorate, and it did have a an interesting, I shall say, condition relating to Yorkshire Water and connection to sewerage. I would argue that if a council had put that in, it would have been slung back at them as the most ridiculous condition in history. But it just seems that the planning inspector has invented a whole new concept here, in my view. But I do suppose I just want to test the question on this. Because that's an all-allocated site, they'll argue that that condition can go in. This is an allocated site, and I think we've had obviously information through, and I know the agent has put in about the right to connect, which has always been my understanding. If a site is allocated, there is an obligation in law to accommodate. How that accommodation is done, I think certainly I've talked to other people that are trying to develop on allocated sites, and yes, they're getting some very interesting solutions from York Water, but the problem is it's a private company that's dealing with a client. It's between them and the client, and this is where it becomes a problem because it's a matter of public interest, but we have very little influence over it. How far could we put in conditions on this that would be closer to the David Wilson Homes site? Could we do that on an allocated site, or is the fact that it's allocated limiting how we can condition this application?
I don't, from my perspective, I don't really see that there's a difference from our perspective. Okay, so clearly the response that we had previously from Yorkshire Water on this site was that because it was allocated, they'd already taken it into consideration in terms of capacity, and therefore we didn't have to go any further. That wasn't the case with the Middleton Road application, which was clearly something that the Yorkshire Water weren't aware of, and therefore they potentially had a future capacity issue as a result. And so the inspector in their wisdom considered the Grampian condition to be acceptable in that case. Clearly, in that scenario, the onus is still between the developer and Yorkshire Water in terms of finally making that connection. We had a discussion earlier around actually what happens in this scenario if Yorkshire Water come back to us when we're looking to discharge the condition, they say no. Okay, so we don't discharge the condition. The requirements of the Water Act would prevail. So we could be in a very odd situation whereby, the developer could be notionally taking the Yorkshire Water to court on the basis that they're not in compliance with the Water Act. I'm not sufficiently conversant with the Water Act to say how much additional weight would be given to the allocation, because my understanding is that that's not relevant. It's clearly relevant in terms of us trying to do things in a proactive way and make sure that everybody's on the same page in terms of when development is likely to be delivered, and therefore their financial plans in order to carry out upgrades to the wastewater treatment plant. As I say, from my perspective, it's up to members at the end of the day as to the nature of the conditions that we apply. Clearly, we can provide advice as to the impact of those conditions, how they would be, how would they be written. Clearly, the Middleton Road application, the condition is materially different. I think it says no occupancy prior to capacity being made available or some such. Which clearly provides for the scenario which was suggested, I think, in representations as well, whereby they could get on and build the thing, but not be able to occupy it, which does seem a little obtuse. I think from the developer's point of view, they weren't concerned about that. They put forward the argument at the time of the appeal that actually, given their timescales to get on site, given the completions that they would likely to have over time, they didn't consider that to be an onerous situation for them in terms of the likelihood of Yorkshire Water being able to deal with the wastewater treatment plant. Clearly, the condition that's put forward here kind of opens some other doors. It's quite flexible. So, for instance, I mean, the conversations that we've been having routinely around the issues of wastewater treatment have been about surface water inundation, and clearly the opportunities for developers, landowners, Yorkshire Water to reduce that surface water inundation the condition, it's not there anymore. The condition as penned by Yorkshire Water kind of opens that opportunity in my mind to solutions which aren't simply increasing capacity at the wastewater treatment plant. They could be around attenuation on site. So, you know, a big tank on site, heavy rain, you don't pump any sewage to the wastewater treatment plant during that period. So it certainly enables a number of opportunities to be examined. Clearly, at the end of the day, they've got to be in compliance. Yorkshire Water's got to be in compliance with the Water Act in terms of their ability to connect.
Yeah, I think thanks for that clarification, because I think it's one of those really grey areas. I mean, I've noticed on the second page, there's that line that's used in virtually every planning application that I've seen, which is item 3, which is towards the end. A supply can be made available and the issues can be resolved under the provisions of the Water Act 1991. It's always been put to me that that is the concession of the right to connect. Would that be your understanding of it? Yeah.
Right. So I want to pick something up because I hear what Yorkshire Water have done, but I do have some concerns in that if they take the foul water into a tank, what I don't want to see is tankering. That's the real issue for me. I don't want to see tankering coming in. It needs to be done properly. So that's the first thing. And I'm not sure we can consider this because this is reserved. Is this not a reserved matter? I don't know. You can tell me what that is. 5.5 bungalows. So we get 5 bungalows and a contribution. It would be my understanding. 38.5 affordable homes. Again, the 0.5 would be a contribution. Now, I've looked at the layout or the indicative layout provided by the applicant, and I'm looking at the existing housing estate to the north of the site. And if you recall, Alan, when we did the Whitby Road site, the bottom of that site, the south of that site, was predominantly bungalows that had were already existing. So I think it's not unreasonable to go back to the developer and say that where on that northern edge where it's predominantly a bungalow arrangement, that the 5 bungalows that they've got to do are put on the northern edge, so there isn't that overbearing position for the current residents that are there. My second thing is I'm going to come back to the water pipe, because I think it's really important that no building is set over the water main, and we need to be really clear where that water main is running so that we don't interrupt that and give Yorkshire Water further headaches to deal with the issues of dealing with the water supply. And then I just wondered what the distance would be, and I accept it's only indicative, between the existing bungalows on the northern edge to the proposed properties in the new application, and then to pick up on this issue with Yorkshire Water and Grampian conditions. And I'm very grateful that I understood this Grampian conditions situation. I need to just understand that this is fairly strong and it will deliver what we think it's going to deliver, but also, and we said this at the area committee, we want Yorkshire Water strategic planning people to come here and explain themselves and tell us exactly what they're going to do, because as we have been given a 4,000 plus target for housing to be delivered in 1 year every year for the next 4 or 5 years at North Yorkshire, we have to know how we are going to achieve this in terms of infrastructure, and we need them here and they need to explain themselves. And I accept it's all down to money, but that doesn't alter they need to explain themselves. Strategic planning from Yorkshire Water need to come to this council and speak about it. Right, sorry, rant over.
If I may. So just looking at the relationship to Poole Court, I note there are about 12 properties on Pool Court along that boundary. And so the idea that we're only 5 bungalows in the proposals kind of doesn't work. I guess that there's 2 opportunities here. One is to set a constraint in the permission by way of condition. The other is for us to take note and put a file note in terms of the reserve matters application, and or you could request that the reserve matters are brought back to this committee as and when. So there are certainly opportunities to look at those discrete relationships, bearing in mind there is nothing to stop the developer from laying out the site with a 2-story building, but with sufficient separation distance. So, you know, I'm not inclined as a rule to constrain development by condition overtly, but clearly to take account of those concerns. And as I say, to ensure that the reserve matters layout is responsive to those concerns.
I'd certainly like that conditioning that says we've got to look at that going forward. Thank you.
If I may just come in on that, just on that particular point, I've attempted to achieve that in condition 8, which obviously the reserved matters includes layout, and that is included as a standard condition, but condition 8 is to remind the future developer of the series of constraints that are applicable to this site, so it doesn't come as a surprise when the reserve matters come forward and we're looking at layout. So yeah, we've I think that doesn't include any reference to standoffs from Pool Court, but as Peter says, I think it probably doesn't warrant a specific distance. It's just to bear in mind that we would be seeking good standards of residential amenity on that particular point. So so whether condition 8 is one where there's the scope for an additional point to be added, on just to bear in mind that relationship with Pool Court on the northern boundary, just to focus the attention of a future developer is a possibility.
I think I would certainly appreciate that, and Councillor Andrews is happy to second that, so thank you for that.
Can I just raise a question too about the speed limit along the A169 that goes from 60 to 30 very quickly? I realise this is a highways matter, but who would I raise that with to get, I know it says south of the development, but that could be literally meters from the development, and whereas I think it should go much further south. Is that something we can put in here, or is that something I've got to sort of wrangle with highways over?
The latter, I would suggest. So what normally happens with these scenarios is that we have a development proposal put in. There are then generalized alterations, amendments to the highway. They are then subject to a full road safety audit, a stage 2 road safety audit, which involves the police and others, in order to establish the position of the limit signs, bearing in mind notionally if you put them too far out, that could also be a problem which doesn't resolve anything but causes a speeding issue. So yeah, so there is a mechanism which, even where we're looking to promote the position of a speed limit through the planning process, it would still then be subject to the highways processes. So my inclination is, whilst we might look to raise that issue here, that an approach to Carl Battersby, I guess, would be your appropriate route in order to seek a particular outcome. Is that fair?
Do members have any other questions? Right, I'll move it into debate. Joy, you're the local member. I would suggest you open it up.
Thank you. Yes, this site has been in the local plan for a long time, and it's one of those that I know the resident of Mickle Hill pointed out earlier that the road is a very busy road, and access. Perceived access. I mean, our highways have come back and said that it's okay, but when we argued about Mickle Hill being built, we did say that it would cause issues with the highway, and the resident has pointed that out. So, you know, but we have to take on board what all the statutory consultees have said, and I don't think we can refuse this. I spent a lot of time looking at the Yorkshire Water issue until the last minute letter that came in, and I did have it written out that I could only support this application if that it was in there that no dwelling should be occupied until Yorkshire Water had basically upgraded the sewage plant, because I fear if we don't approve this, it will go to appeal, and we'll be, you know, it could be that we have costs, because I can't see any material planning reason other than I can't morally agree to apply to approve this if we know it's going to pollute Pickering Beck. I understand the concerns of the residents, but we have to take our fair share of housing, and the fact that I'm continually contacted by people needing housing in Pickering. It is needed. There is a myth that the schools are overrun. They aren't. They want more pupils. They need more pupils. The doctor's surgery, we can't tell them how many hours they work. It's up to them, their model. They run their business accordingly. So we do need more housing. We need the right housing in the right places. And I thank Councillor Goodrick to point out bungalows against bungalows. I think that's important when people have been used to a view. Yes, providing that that it's absolutely watertight, for want of a better word, or foul tight, that that they cannot occupy the residents, the buildings, and these are going to be homes for people. And until that, if I can have that confirmed, then I will move this for approval. Sorry.
Anybody else? Councillor Donoghue-Moncrief.
Yeah, obviously I wasn't here when the original was discussed, and I read obviously the concerns about Yorkshire Water, and I read the letters that came through yesterday, and it's like, yes, it probably is an issue, but if you can transfer this issue to every place where there is a development site in the county, there is an issue. There's an issue where I live, and as I say, I've been speaking with somebody who has an allocated site there where I live, who is trying to develop, and yes, they are dealing with Yorkshire Water, and basically Yorkshire Water, yes, they're not going to increase the sewage plant size, they're passing on the mitigations to the developer. Now, there's an argument about whether or not that's particularly actually right, because that's adding to the cost of development as well, which ultimately adds to the cost of housing. So, and then my instinct was, even if I got a letter saying the sewage site has capacity, would I really believe it? Would I go to bed at night thinking, whoopie-doo, I've got a letter here from Yorkshire Water saying everything's okay? Because I don't know if I would be terribly confident in that, or that how long does it have capacity for? 1 week? 1 year? 10 years? I don't know. And so I just thought, well, I'm getting into an argument here that I suspect I couldn't substantiate, even if, because somebody will come back to me and say what they've said is wrong. And I think there's a genuine public debate about this. However, my concern is, as I say, I can pick lots of applications that come through here where we could have had the same argument, and we had legitimate grounds on which to have that argument. There's a fundamental problem, which is while there's a legal obligation to accommodate, there is no legal obligation on utilities, or indeed the council, or indeed the NHS, to properly publish how they are progressing against housing delivery in terms of their plans, and that needs to be more public than it is. My gut instinct around conditions, what I've learned now over the years, is sometimes a condition is better than a refusal because the condition has to be discharged publicly, so I get to see what the information is as to how it's discharged. And given that we've already had the ruling on the unallocated side, I just think we are laying ourselves wide open if we turn down an allocated side, because other developers will already be looking around there thinking the appeal will be, you know, it's just going to get thrown out and we will get costs against us. And while sometimes you think that's a risk worth taking, I don't think my judgment tells me that we can take that risk. And so therefore I'm happy to support this going through today.
Councillor Napton.
Yeah, thank you, Chairman. I'd like to support my colleagues. I think that it's quite clear to me that if we were to refuse this application, it would go to appeal. And in my mind, it would win and we would lose planning control. So we would lose planning control, and who knows what the inspector will do. Could be very much more lenient than we are in this room today. So it's not satisfactory on a national basis. The way that the utilities, the transparency of the utilities, the way they are not held to make future plans, public, when central government makes these housing allocations. But sadly, that's all in the hands of central government, and those things I hope will change, but they will not change from this chamber. They will change from Westminster. So, with all that in mind, Chairman, I will be supporting the application, though obviously with reserves, same as my colleagues.
Anyone else? Right. So, I'm going to pick something up, and I am about to age myself, and I'm feeling really uncomfortable about that, because my very first site visit as a member of the planning committee was Mickle Hill. And I remember going there. That was not an allocated site. And I remember the uproar when it was approved. So everywhere has an issue when it comes to building houses. So whilst I accept there is an issue, this site is allocated in the plan, and it was accepted, and it was inspected by the planning inspector and found to be sound. So for all the reasons that my colleagues have said, we would be in a really difficult position to actually turn this site down, because it is part of planned development, and the whole purpose of having a development plan is to plan that development. So I think we're in a really difficult situation to say no. I'm really pleased, I won't say comforted because I'm not comforted, that Yorkshire Water have stepped up and accepted that there's an issue now, because they've been told there's an issue with the court case. They've been told there's an issue by the planning inspector on that unallocated site. And now we've got another issue on an unallocated site. Yorkshire Water must come and explain themselves. We must review this, because as my other colleagues have said, this is not an isolated incident. And I don't want to see tankering, and I don't want to see unauthorised discharge into watercourses of foul water. So we've got it, and I'm not saying they have to upgrade the treatment plant, because if you pointed out, we've got areas in the county where the sewer has been uncombined, and it will be successful, and part of that could help, but it may be a small part of the solution rather than the whole solution. I do think we need to look at the bungalow provision about where it's sited. So I would be proposing, if members are happy, that that's added into the conditions as it stands, and then that's me done for what I've got to say. I'll open it up for anybody else to have any other statement. Councillor Baker.
as you know, I'm not happy about the access, but I will bow to Highways as they're the professionals on this. But I'm still not happy about the access, and I think Joy will probably understand my qualms about that. But apart from that, I'm quite happy with, as long as the Yorkshire Water issue is addressed.
Thank you very much. So it has been moved and seconded for a minded to approve because of all the bits and pieces, and it's got that additional condition as well. Can we please go to the vote, members? Those for, raise your hands. Yeah. Yeah. Thank you very much. Sorry, it was unanimous. Yes, thank you. That's it. Thank you very much. Right. I have got no any other items, and so I'm going to declare the meeting closed at just before 11:30, and the next meeting is the 16th of October. Thank you very much, members. Oh,